Now, technological advances are yielding less fruit for the agriculture sector as power cuts ruin harvests and even cause the death of livestock. Companies are having to spend millions on electricity while making fewer returns. Energy Management Systems Executive at CBI, Roger Hislop, joins us this afternoon to discuss this further. A very good afternoon to you, Roger, and thank you for joining us. Now, it's been a top of mind for many of those who attended this year's NAMPO event. The agriculture sector speaking about many of the issues that they're facing, and load shedding being right at the top there. Just a general overview, if you will, how badly is the agriculture sector dealing with the power cuts and the dire implications thereafter?
Hi, Rifuya. Thank you for having me on your show. It's dire because for the agriculture sector, it's not a matter of convenience or of comfort. If you can't pump water for several days and there's a bit of a heat wave, your crops could die. If you aren't able to keep the chicken barns at the right temperature, livestock can die. And we saw that a few months back. So it's an absolute crisis for the agriculture industry. And I mean, it's the industry that probably employs something in the region of 1 million people in South Africa. So it's a key employer of people. It's a key provider of the food that we need for our families to eat, and it's absolutely core to our independence as a nation, for us to have a strong, vibrant, growing agriculture sector. And that's before we even look at export markets, where agriculture is a key export sector.
So energy security is absolutely crucial here. And I'm just wondering about the costs of electricity that the agriculture sector spends and really how much that has increased by, if you could give us a ballpark figure when they have to consider diesel or other alternative forms of power.
Well, if you just look at the increases that NERSA has approved for Eskom over this fiscal and next fiscal, we're looking at 30% over the next effective year, because if you look from when the first increase goes into effect to when the second increase goes into effect, it's just over a year. And 30% added to the cost of anything is going to drive up the exit price to the consumer dramatically. So it's not just a matter of energy security and making sure that you can do what you need to do. It's also just the cost of the energy. Now, the agriculture sector has been very fast to move to implementing solar, but the thing is, solar by itself isn't enough. You need to have solar plus storage, because during the hot part or the bright part of the day when you're generating a lot of power, if you can't consume that power from the panels, then it goes to waste. If you can't pull the power, it's not created, which means that you're not really offsetting your cost of your utility, because you're only able to use a certain amount of the power generated during the day, unless you've got batteries. Now, batteries are extremely expensive, so they could easily double the cost of an installation, possibly even as much as 70%, which means that the solar industry has been targeting the agribusiness very actively, because the agribusiness desperately needs energy security. It desperately needs to offload some of the costs of the utility. But now we're in a position where you're sometimes waiting 2, 3, 4 months to be able to get a solar installation done, simply because there's not enough trained, qualified people and not enough kit in the country. You're often waiting months for inverters or for batteries or for frames or for panels to become available.
Yeah, and then talk us through the role that technology can play here, because it is estimated that the demand within the sector for electricity is expected to double by 2030. So one would assume that technology is going to play an ever increasingly important role. Talk us through that.
Okay, so there's two important things in agriculture. The first is growth, and the agribusinesses get bigger. Unfortunately, it does mean that sort of small independent farmers are becoming a little bit of a thing of the past. Now it's kind of large, well-established, well-capitalized companies. And in some cases, they do have deep enough pockets to invest in technology. In some cases, it's a farmer that maybe it's been in the family for many generations. They don't have deep pockets. So they need to look at two types of technologies. One is, how can they improve energy security? And that would be done through embedded generation, diesel generators. It could be solar PV in combination with batteries, but that's extremely expensive. The other aspect you can look at is how do you use less energy? So they sometimes call power management systems or demand management systems virtual power stations, because you're kind of creating power by not using power. And that means that a consumer of power needs to look at how are they using it, where are they using it, why are they using it, can they use it more efficiently, can they stop wasting it where it's unnecessary, or can they use more advanced technologies to get more work for less electricity. And that can be variable speed drives on pumps. There's a host of technologies, but unfortunately, most of them are quite expensive. What's relatively cheap is energy management systems, which is what my company, CBI Energy, makes, which is load controllers which turn things on and off according to sort of very intelligent rules. So you get lots of data going where you're using your power, how can you use it more effectively. That would then lead you to how do I automate turning things on and off in an optimum way, or in a way that lets me sweat the asset of my solar plant by using the energy when it's most effective to use.
And so you said it's very expensive, but one would assume that the investment that would be made in the technology that you've just described to us would be a long-term investment, and it's not something that someone operating in the space would have to constantly be concerned or worry about over a period of a few years or for example.
Yes, certainly. And I mean, but you're still looking at 5 to 10 years, which in South Africa is a very long time. In 10 years, a lot's happened. So 5 to 10 years, it is a relatively long time, but it does mean that companies and individual farmers that are trying to deal with what's going on right now, they're in a bit of a pickle because they've got an immediate problem, but they also have an immediate cash flow problem. Over 5 to 10 years, certainly they could invest in systems, technologies that could significantly improve their lot, but that's in 5 to 10 years' time.
Yeah.
So for the very deep pocket agribusinesses, certainly for the smaller independents, it's a very difficult decision to make. What money do they invest now, and what's the most effective way to do so? And you do find that maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago, when when load shedding started feeling like a crisis, a lot of people they jumped, they maybe panicked slightly. They bought a lot of diesel generators, and they bought solar, and it turned out to be grid-tied solar, so it doesn't really help you when your utility goes down. And diesel, the price of diesel has gone up and up and up. So now you're looking at anything upwards of kind of 10 to 15 rand per kilowatt hour for diesel generation. And in some cases, you're looking at sort of 20, 25, 30 rand per kilowatt hour for diesel generation, which is an order of magnitude more than you'd be paying to Eskom. So your entire way of modeling your business now requires this input cost that you just never thought of 5 years ago.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you very much for those insights, Roger. Really worrying picture that's been painted there in the agriculture space, and obviously the food security that's been talked about over the last few months here in South Africa.